It's in the packet. Well, you numbered them. You numbered them. You numbered them 1 and 2. You did. Probably because we gave it to you. Like, all right. I don't know. Tell me it's no. Yes. Man, it's freezing in here. That's it's cold. We won't be here long.
Chair, are you in a good mood?
Okay, guys, I think we really, let's get started here.
Tonight. We all-
Okay, we're gonna, Senator Washington's bill, we'll wait until the end because she's still, I think, stuck up in the finance committee, but
NACO and MML. to be
well,
the party
I
for
understand.
longer.
I understand. That's right. We want their company. Okay, okay, we got 6 bills here and let's, hopefully let's just do them. So let's start with Senator Lamb and Stacy, why don't you lead off with Senate Bill 120 and we'll go.
Senate Bill 120, Public Schools Anaphylactic Food Allergies Guidelines. I'm not going to read this because this is your third view of this bill. I will say there is a new amendment from Senator Lamb. It's on page 3 of your packet that essentially incorporates the changes that Senator Gallion had proposed with some minor changes. He accepted that change where it focuses the changes to the law to food-related allergens. It provides that before January 1, 2026, a public school can't be required to dispose of food products made or purchased before the federal sesame labeling requirements became effective on January 1, 2023. And also requires a public school that uses a food made or purchased before January 1, 2023 to disclose that the food may contain sesame, and it doesn't have, because it didn't have to follow the federal guidelines.
Okay, any discussion about the Gallion amendment or the other, Senator
Yeah.
Gallion?
So that opportunity, Senator Lamb and also Delegate Pavlich Carr, both got to meet in person individually with both. I think everybody's pretty happy with this one, so I'd like to move the amendment.
The motion is second on the Gallion amendment. It's more than the Gallion amendment. There was the Lamb. Okay,
These are also Senator Lamb, so this would be
Okay.
essentially 3 Senator Lamb amendments.
okay, fair enough. Well, as a package, we have a motion, a second on the amendments. All in favor of the amendments, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, the amendments carry. Now I have the bill on the table as amended. Is there a motion? Senator Brooks is favorable. Is there a second from Senator Kagan? Okay, all in favor of the bill as amended, Senate Bill 120, raise your hand. All opposed, Senate Bill 120 carries. We're gonna next move to Senator Watson's bill, Senate Bill 266. Back to you, Stacy.
Senate Bill 266, Maryland Consortium on Coordinated Community Supports Membership Alterations. This bill adds 1 school counselor certified by the Maryland State Department of Education, designated by the Maryland School Counselor Association, to the membership of the Maryland Consortium on Coordinated Community Supports. The bill also makes technical changes to stagger the terms of the new member. There are no other amendments.
Okay, we've got a motion, a second. Okay, there are no I'm sorry.
There's no amendments.
No amendments. We've got a motion, second on Senate Bill 266. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, Senate Bill 266 carries. Next move to Senate Bill 390, Senator Lewis Young's bill. We're gonna go to you, April.
Senate Bill 390, Provision of Veterinary Services, Routine Medical Care, and Rabies Vaccines. This bill requires the State Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners to authorize veterinary practitioners that are licensed, certified, or otherwise authorized to practice medicine in another state or jurisdiction to provide routine medical care in animal shelters in the state. The bill also requires the Secretary of Health to allow individuals working in or for a veterinary hospital or animal control facility to administer rabies vaccines subject to specified conditions. There are amendments in your packet being offered by the bill's sponsor, Senator Lewis Young. Those amendments appear on page 8 and the reprint starts on page 10. So these amendments, which I believe were worked out in part to sort of address some of the vet board's concerns. They strike language requiring the vet board to allow out-of-state practitioners to provide routine medical care to shelter pets, and instead require the vet board to establish an expedited process for licensing out-of-state practitioners. The amendments also limit the authority to administer rabies vaccines under the bill to registered vet techs and other clinical staff that work for an animal shelter, and limit it to situations where the animal being vaccinated is under the custody or control of the shelter. Requires the veterinary practitioner who signs the rabies certificate to ensure that the administering staff have been appropriately trained, and to identify the administering staff on the rabies vaccination certificate. Finally, the amendments add a reporting requirement, which you can read there.
Okay, Senator Lewis Young, do you want to add anything to what April just had to say? Okay, you had indicated these are sort of now at this point you believe to be consensus with all the folks who were a bit on the other side. Is that a fair statement? Yes, Senator Kagan.
I have a question, Mr. Chair. I don't know if you want to add, vote the amendments first and then have questions, or if you want me to ask a question now.
Why don't you ask a question now?
Okay, so either from Ms. Morton or Senator Lewis Young. I'm just curious, since we're letting out-of-state folks take care of our pets if they're kenneled there, not take care of, sorry, but vaccinate. Is it reciprocal? Can you just clarify? In other words, if we're letting a Pennsylvania vet or vet tech or something take care of our folks, can we take care of theirs?
Amendments, that's out of the bill. It would no longer allow the out-of-state practitioners to, it would instead just require the vet board to set up an expedited process for licensing them as Maryland vets in addition to being out-of-state vets.
And a similar question then, does Pennsylvania, Virginia, blah, blah, West Virginia, do they have expedited for Maryland vets?
Not that I am aware of, but yeah.
I'm not aware of that either, but basically the language that we included in the amendment to address the process was something that the vets had agreed to February a year ago. It was discovered in their minute meetings, their meeting minutes.
Right.
It's late.
I just think that, definitely late. I'm just wondering if they're about courtesy and reciprocal treatment and economic development, supporting our own vets, but that's fine. Okay, thank you, Senator.
Okay, any additional discussion, questions? Okay, with that said, okay, Senator Hester.
Sorry, I just have one more question. I'm on page 13, underneath line 12, it talks about the animal being vaccinated is under custody or control of an animal shelter or an animal control facility. So are we only talking about small animal vets? Or are we also talking about large animal vets?
Two pieces under the amended bill. One is just sort of a standalone provision. So this is on page 12 of the voting packet at the top. Just sort of in general, requiring the vet board to set up an expedited process for licensing the out-of-state vets. So that's across the board. It doesn't specify small animals, large animals. Separately, the provisions on page 13 are about allowing registered vet techs and clinical staff who work for a shelter to administer rabies vaccines to the shelter pets. And so that additional language there about it being under the custody and control is to say that they can't set up a community vaccination clinic. It's just for the animals that are under the, are staying at the shelter, basically.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, anybody want to move those amendments? Would the Senator from Frederick want to move her amendments? And second from Senator Gallion. Okay, all in favor of the amendments, raise your hand. All opposed? Got the bill on the table as amended. Anybody want to move the bill as amended? Senate Bill 390. Senator Lewis
second.
Young and Senator Kagan's a second. Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Bill as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, Senate Bill 390 carries. Senator Washington's timing is perfect. She arrives back. Hopefully it was a great bill hearing up there. And hopefully they have like 10 more bill here. Hopefully they're gonna be here till 1 a.m. It'll make us feel much better. No, okay, I shouldn't, I strike that. I can't believe we're on the, okay, never mind. I didn't really mean that. Okay, Senator Washington, Senate Bill 382. I know Mako MML, there was some back and forth. Dom, you want to come up here just so there's no miscommunication about where, yeah, I can't see her because she's behind that.
Sorry.
Come on up here, Angelica. You're being blocked by that amazing new podium.
Never do it again.
So
Yeah.
the good news is, Ben Brooks can see the witnesses, but I can't see you behind that. Okay, Senator Washington, why don't you tell us kind of where we are on
Well,
Senate Bill
we've
382?
come to an agreement. Alexis has Ms. Foxworth has the amendments to accommodate the concern that the task force was overly prescriptive. I eliminated all of that and made it more generic, just to, removing words like shall create or promote or anything to suggest that we already have a ending. I also struck a number of the very specific explorations in the bill. For example, well, I just got rid of a lot of stuff. Sorry, I'm just a little tired. Got rid of, for example, shall establish limits on the maximum square footage, standardizing. So anything that looked like it was actually drafting legislation. So got rid of that, but however, maintained that we wanted to study that we're going to focus primarily on owner occupied properties. That was something that I added, that again, to narrow the scope. So not looking at any kind of commercial applications or anything. And then also just that we would just survey a representative sample of ordinances and laws and codes. Again, eliminating telling that we're going to do that. Now, they may then also to say that the committee shall make legislative or other policy recommendations, including a list of best practices, which is again their language, and also including impacts on local housing markets, neighborhood livability, et cetera. So those were sort of my amendments.
Okay. Alexis,
So in addition to the ones that they had also, there was some things that Mako wanted included that I accepted all those. So
before I go to the duo there, anything else you want to add, Senator Washington did not mention? Just give you.
So maybe worth mentioning some of the membership changes as well.
Oh, right.
All of which is included in the reprint, so we can see some of those things, the inclusion of several folks and the exclusion of other entities. So the reprint begins on page 4 of the packet. So American Institute of Architects, the American Association of Retired Person, a representative from the Maryland Coalition of Interior Designers, for example, have been included in building planning representation, community developer representation, and building inspector representation has also been removed to substitute for those entities that I just described.
and also, sorry, that Mako's representation will increase from 1 each to 2 each. So that has to be another amendment. That's another amendment that will get this moving.
And so
This and then make amendments to the amendment, because I have a couple of questions.
Sure. Well, before we do that, you guys want to weigh in on anything you just heard?
Yeah, sure. So that's going to be 2 representatives from Mako and 2 representatives from MML. First and foremost, we are very grateful to everyone here. I know it's a very long day and you've all been hearing from county executives and mayors and council members. So thank you all very much for your attention to this issue. And thank you very much, Senator Washington, for your cooperation, your communication with us. We very much appreciate it. As Senator Washington described, Mako and MML are comfortable with the most recent updated draft.
Okay, but before we do anything, if you have questions, why don't you just get it out
I
now?
don't have a question for them. I have a question for Senator Washington.
Okay, then why don't you do that?
Okay.
Just throw that.
So one of my questions thank you. One of my questions was about Mako and MML. So you fixed that, or you've addressed that. So thank you. And I assume we're going to want to say rural, urban, or 2 different
Yeah.
sizes or something, not
And,
just
and
2.
that language is with Alexis, yeah.
Okay,
exactly
so
right.
I just
Yeah.
want to clarify on that. Similarly, on page 5, one member of the Senate, one member of the House. I wonder, Senator Washington, whether that's sufficient, because sometimes we want political, ideological, geographic diversity. Do we not need that? You're good with 1 and 1?
Well, I wanted to, it's very clear that this is the counties and the municipalities work group really, and to add additional folks would upset the balance. And so I want to be mindful not to do
Well,
that.
we're adding AARP and the architects and
Well, see,
the
we've already,
condo people and
well,
the,
there are constituents that are,
Okay.
I'm just saying that that was part of our discussion.
okay.
And I just wanted to honor that.
Okay, I just have 2 more things. Page 5, line 9. This sounds like a little bit of a shred of leftover from the original tone of the bill, which is there is an accessory dwelling unit promotion and policy task force. And I wonder whether what you think of removing the word promotion and,
Yeah, I wanted to do that as well.
is that?
That's
okay.
fine.
You guys
Yes,
are
that
okay?
should be removed. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the last question I have, page 7, the 2 dates. November 1, 2023 is an amendment, and June 1, 2024 is an amendment.
Mhm.
And I wonder if you could share your expectations, because June 1, 2024 obviously is after the legislative session, which means that the 2025 session would be the first time that ADU could come up before the General Assembly. And I just want to check
That
with you
must be,
and learn your intent on that.
that must, did not have.
Page
that.
7, lines 6 through 11.
Yeah, sorry, my coming up from, let me just make sure I
Yes.
have my bill.
Do you need a copy of the voting list?
No, I have my. bill.
Okay, look at you.
I just had to get to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you say that again to,
Of course, page 7, lines 6 through 11.
right?
It has 2 new dates.
Yes. So my thinking was I wanted to accelerate it. The original bill, I had it even later. It was, it was December 1st, 2024. I think I did mean to move that up. If the amendment didn't do that, then I would like to move it up.
So it looks like you moved it up like almost 2 months in the first section,
Mhm.
and then later by 6 months,
Yeah,
which gets us after the General Assembly legislative session
right.
on line 9. But again, I don't know what your hope and intent is in that.
My hope is that we have an opportunity to do the research that we need to do, and also have an opportunity to get briefed in time for the next legislative session.
Right. Which then depends on how quickly the members are appointed, how
Right.
quickly they meet, and whether
Right.
there's the opportunity to pull
Well,
something
if the
together.
senator
and
has a suggestion, that would be helpful.
It's your bill.
Eh,
Yeah.
But it's our bill, actually, and
Right.
I'm not being rhetorical.
Right.
I'm just,
Well, if
Uh,
it's going to be complicated, and if there's going to be a delay in who gets appointed and when you start convening, I would think June 1 is kind of a never land,
okay,
because it's kind of too late legislatively and yet too abbreviated to really give them more time.
Mhm.
So do you push it up and go back to December of 2023, which seems rushed, maybe? Or do you push it back to December 2024 and give folks like a good long time? It's really your call. It's your task force.
Can I just ask you, is that the last outstanding
that's, yeah.
issue? Because as I said, I
Yeah.
promised the group if we're going to get too involved,
Yeah.
we can just push it to the Thursday voting session. So I don't,
I think
okay, I mean,
I'm good. It's just the senator's decision.
Yeah, if we could just continue, that would be great. I mean, we can just leave it as it is for now. If
okay.
there's an opportunity to change it, the other side or just whatever, but.
So was the other chamber. Okay, so I want no confusion here. Okay, do we know where we are? Do you all know? I'm not sure I know what modifications
So,
still out.
so,
You got rid of promotion.
okay, so instead of it being a 2-year and 1 month period, the bill is amended to make it a 1 year and 7 month period. Now, while so the senator is suggesting then that saving that 6 months doesn't really help with the idea of putting in if there's going to be legislation. But I do want to make sure that I'd rather not rush for, I don't anticipate us rushing for legislation. I'd rather us really think through this. Right? I'd rather us think through this and
tell us.
and I think that if to think through it and have an opportunity to have conversation around it. And if it's in 2025, that's fine. I don't think, to me, it's better that we take the time and get it right and that there is consensus rather than rushing to try to meet, next year. I don't think that works. So that's why even though I shorten the amount of time that we meet, my hope was that that would give us more time to actually think through, have conversation, and then take next steps.
Senator Augustine.
Now we're getting down there. So the community development professional was removed, right, from the group, or am I reading that wrong? An individual with professional experience, community development, planning, residential, mixed use.
Well, I added the Department of Housing and Community Development, the Secretary of Housing and Community Development.
In order to fill that role. Okay, that helps. Can I also just, are we still on the amendments or are we?
Yeah, we haven't moved anything yet.
Actually, I'll wait till we get to the bill then.
Okay, well, we're not even, we haven't moved any
Oh,
amendments
can we
yet. We
move the
haven't-
amendments, the first set.
Can we
Okay,
just get a reiteration of what?
yeah, well, that's, I
what it
agree
is?
with that part. Let's make sure we know what we're moving and what the amendment. So Alexis, you're the one that's the scrivener here of all the, okay, so why don't you do a
right.
quick rehash? of
So-
everything?
First up are Senator Washington's sponsor amendments. So they broaden the scope, the focus of the task force, instead of sort of predetermining an outcome as been contested. It's just going to study policies, survey certain laws for the purpose of determining ADUs, but not to particularly promote the creation of them. Modifies the composition of the task force as well to include those individuals that are listed, and the ones that are scratched out, of course, are the ones that have been removed. So the reporting date is modified as we've just observed, but the task force itself is still 2 years and 1 month. So that'll give them kind of 6 months maybe to relitigate some issues before the task force itself is removed. But other than that, nothing else from the sponsor amendments. And I will say to rehash NACO and MML's amendments, what we would have if both are adopted, they would work together, is we would add one representative. So representatives from NACO and MML are already represented on the task force. We would add one more from each of those entities and just designate for both of those slots that one should be rural and the other should be urban.
And promotion
And change the title, that's right. So the title of the task force itself would be Accessory Dwelling Unit Policy Task Force.
Okay, we all,
I'm
okay.
sorry, I
Yeah,
just,
oh, yeah, go on.
sorry, I just need to, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here. On page 7, if the task force expires on June 30th, 2025, you're asking for a report to the governor and the General Assembly 13 months before it ends. That just seems premature and not taking advantage of the time in this bill. Do you see where it says on or before June 1, 2024 on line 9, page 7, you're going to report its finding. And then in 12 through 15, it says at the end of June 30, 2025, 13 months later, then it goes out of commission. Bad pun. That just seems like a missed opportunity, Senator. I don't know. My suggestion,
Yeah.
may I offer a
Yeah.
suggestion?
Sure.
I would change on line 9. I would change June 1 to either December 1 or December 31. And then you've got 6 more months legislative session if you want to consult with the task force, if they want to be advocates, or you want to have another meeting, it still exists. And then they go out of business. Does that
Sounds
make
good.
sense to you?
Yes, it does.
Okay, line 9, going to suggest December.
Okay, Senator Augustine, yeah.
So you just your intent, Senator, with the, just so I understand for myself, the first report that talks about the activities is to happen in this year, right? So that's just the activities. It's not yet getting to the recommendations. I think that you had pushed, even though it was going to be for the next legislative session, but I think that you had initially, just so I'm explaining it, you had pushed up the recommendations because you wanted to get the recommendations a little bit sooner. That's where that June 1st, 2024 came from. Because they could be legislative, but they could also be non-legislative recommendations, which is probably the reason why. And I think, I'm just saying, I think that the June 30, 2025 is probably a relic of before, because that date would probably be moved up because you're trying to make this thing happen a little bit more expeditiously. Would you?
I draft on my bill, so unfortunately I have everything but that sounds exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah,
a
that's what I
couple
would
nights
think that
ago.
she would have been thinking. So you really, the date that you would move up would have likely been the sunset, the end of it, more so than what you were trying to press the group forward with your recommendations. Does that sound accurate? Or like,
You know, can I just, because we're going to vote again on Thursday. I mean, if I just want to make sure we nail this tight. I mean, I don't, again, I kind of feel like I'm sensing you're not entirely 100% comfortable. Right.
I've have 5 bills tomorrow. I
Right.
just upstairs. So I'm just kind of not in the mode.
okay,
I do believe that what was, I had a
just
reason
said.
why it is the way it is.
yeah,
And I don't believe any time was wasted. I don't think there's any more opposition to the bill. I would like us to press forward. I mean, the bill as amended is the way that I intended it to be.
okay. And then the last part, because Senator Kagan did mention it, but Alexis did not necessarily, I know, I'm imagining it's in there, was on page 5, line 9 of striking that line. You have that marked off?
Not the line, the word, promotion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Promotion and creation.
Yeah, that part. I'm sorry, but that part's bracketed out.
Yeah.
So
that's
that
right. I mentioned
completes
that.
the
Yeah.
amendments and everything.
That's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'll be willing to move favorable on the amendment.
Thank you.
Okay, any second
Okay.
on the amendments as we, I think, have a pretty good sense. Second from Senator Kagan. You all in favor of the amendments as described, raise your hand. All opposed. Okay, the bill as amended, Senate Bill 382. Is there a motion, Senator Washington?
So
Second, Senator
Second.
Kagan.
got some discussion. though,
Yes,
just real quick.
absolutely.
Just
Discussion.
real brief.
Yeah,
I just want to
absolutely.
say that I want to thank the senator for working on this. First of all, we kind of worked during the day. She's had a lot going on, and I know that she's been responsive. But I just have to say that the abuse of ADUs is a real thing in my county and in the area that I represent. I mean, and so there's really concern, and it's not, I'm sorry, not the abuse of ADUs. It's the abuse of sort of what the ADUs seek to do, where we have people who have taken single family homes and cut them up into 10, sort of like room houses situation. I think there's a real concern, and I'm glad that there language in here now that talks about impact on the neighborhood livability. I think that's important. And so I think that that's good. Yeah, that's what I'm
A
saying.
language.
I
liked
like
it.
that because, and I hope that it is communicated because it does have those kinds of impacts. And so I just wanted to say that as this is something that's going to be looked at going forward, that there's two sides often, and it's really has been an issue in the area that I represent.
Okay, we have the motion favorable on the amended version of the bill in front of us. All in favor of that motion, raise your hand. All opposed. Bill carries. Senate Bill 382 carries. Let's move to Senate Bill 718. April.
Senate Bill 718, Voluntary Cleanup Program Determination and Recordation Deadlines. So this departmental bill increases the time frame within which the Maryland Department of the Environment must make certain determinations related to the voluntary cleanup program. It also increases the time frame within which program applicants must record the determination and certificates of completion. There are no amendments in the voting packet. However, I would just draw your attention, if you have your bill files, that NIOP had recommended an amendment to say, rather than the deadline for recordation, the deadline for the participant to provide written evidence of that the determination was presented for recordation. Based off of that, you know, the individual who's trying to record it has control over when they present it for recordation, but then it's up to the local land records how long it's actually going to take to do that recordation. MDE did indicate that that would be seen as a friendly amendment, and just sort of clarifying. So if anybody wanted to offer it.
Okay, well, I'll move that amendment. That makes sense. Second. All in favor of that amendment, raise your hand. Okay, bill is amended. Do anybody want to move favorable? Senate Bill 718. Senator Kagan, favorable. Senator Augustine, second. You're good. All in favor, Senate Bill 718 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, Senate Bill 718 carries. Final bill, Senator Hershey, Senate Bill 831. Stacy.
Senate Bill 831, Libraries, Regional Resource Centers Governance Requirements. This bill alters the governance structure of the 3 public libraries designated as regional resource centers. For example, the Eastern Shore, Southern Maryland, and Western Maryland, by establishing a governing board for each regional resource center. Essentially, this bill codifies current practice, and there are no amendments.
Any discussion? Okay, we have favorable second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the bill, raise your hand. All opposed, Senate Bill 831 carries. And one final piece of business, Senator Hester, special order to bill that we voted out Thursday involving firefighters, but has a floor amendment, wants to discuss with the committee, and we'll take up before she goes back. We go back to the floor tomorrow.
So the Department of the Environment contacted me, and they're concerned about the workload with the 2 civil penalties. So they asked if they could be administrative penalties. And I went back and forth with the firefighters, who said that they would prefer that the first one be a administrative penalty and the second one be a civil penalty. And that's where we're at. So it's only changing the first one from, I have no idea.
So, who's bill? Yeah, we voted on, what's? Yeah, April, I think that's the bill.
So the first penalty was $500. And the second or subsequent penalties was $1,000. They're both currently civil penalties, but the department would prefer that at least the first one is administrative.
Senate Bill
Yeah.
256, if you want to pull it up. Yeah, Senator Guy.
This bill we had last year too, so I'd be fine with whatever they want to do penalty wise, because honestly, firefighters aren't using this anyway anymore from what we heard last year. And it was brought up in the testimony earlier. I mean, they're using straw and like pallets. They're not using it. So this is, I mean, to me, do whatever you want with the fine. I don't think it really will hurt it.
Okay, well, we got the department going to administrative. We've got the firefighters kind of splitting the baby, first administrative, second civil penalty. What's the second, what would the civil penalty be for that second?
1,000.
Is it still 1,000 or you don't know? Because you said the first, currently it's 500 and 1,000 or? Okay, so the question is, if we go one administrative and then a civil penalty, what is the amount of that? Okay, Senator Kagan.
Need to ask a non-JPR question. What is the difference?
So an administrative penalty is essentially like a ticket. Like it's the department can collect the penalty themselves. A civil penalty has to be the result of a civil court trial. So it has to be, rather than an administrative procedure where if you challenged it, you could go before an administrative law judge and challenge it that way, but most people don't. They just pay the ticket. Civil penalty can only be imposed by a court, which means there has to be a civil trial.
Which means it's taking up court time and court personnel time and delays and.
Attorney general time.
And
et
if a
cetera.
person did it a third time, would it be a 1,000 again?
Under the bill, yeah, second or
And then it
subsequent.
would be another court case and another.
Mhm.
I kind of like MDE, pay the fine, but don't bother going to court. They have to learn and stop doing it. And based on what Senator Gallion said.
Okay, well, what's the will of the body here? You know, we now have been educated on the difference between an administrative procedure with an administrative penalty or a civil penalty, which requires an order of the court, the burden issues there. The firefighters have a sort of a middle ground discussion. I'll try to gauge here.
I mean, so
Where we are.
I would offer that we do the first as a administrative and the second as a civil. I've had the amendment drafted. We shouldn't drive anything, but that's the way it's currently drafted. No, because it's only changing the first one to administrative. So yes, it's 500 and 1,000. It's a one-word change. Yes. It does, but we could also just pass it over the house and let them fight it over there.
Who is, okay, it sounds like you're not necessarily aligned with the Hester amendment, but any discussion here? Give me a little straw poll here before we, okay, is there any? And it. Okay, and
Go
and
to court the second time.
you know, Sarah Kagan, you can be a dissenter if you know, feel free. Okay, let's just take a vote on the one word amendment that will be on the floor as a sponsor, or not a sponsor, as a floor amendment. Raise your hand in favor of that. Okay, all opposed? Okay, that amendment carries. That will be on the floor. You can represent that took it before the committee and we supported that floor amendment. I think that's we're done for the day and for the night.